Hello and welcome to the Monday, September 20th, 2010 City Council Informational Meeting. Call the meeting to order. Okay, we'll start off with our City Council staff report with Deborah A. Owen, City Clerk, Chief of Council Operations.
And I'll make it quick. Good afternoon, Sioux Falls City Council. There is no report. Thank you.
That introduction, I think she should just make up a report, but that's just me. All right, we'll move on to item number 3. Mayor Mike Uther. Welcome, Mike.
Councilor Jimson, thanks as always. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to speak. First of all, I just want to thank the City Council for their diligence with the budget cycle. I learned a ton in this process, and I know many of you did as well. I think you definitely found a good balance between moving the city forward as well as being prudent as well. And you certainly are going to move the city forward in a fiscally responsible fashion, and I really thank you for that. I also wanted to give you an update on the next step with the event center topic. I know that that's a hot topic that's not going to go away, and nor should it. First of all, I wanted to let you know, as well as the people of Sioux Falls know, that we will be providing the City Council and the people of Sioux Falls with an update at every second informational meeting of the month. So that'll be the second Monday of every month at 4 o'clock from this point forward. And hopefully it'll be until this point, until we have the grand opening. But you will be at least getting at least a monthly update. And then if the City Council believes that they need even more updates, we'll do that. But I thought at a minimum we would let you schedule that in your calendars, and if the media could let the people of Sioux Falls know that as well, we'd appreciate it. And what it'll do is it'll cover, what we've done in the last 30 days, what we're spending money on, what are some of those next steps, and then, yes, maybe some of those issues or opportunities that we've learned along the way. I also wanted to let you know is that now that the City Council has approved that $500,000 for 2011, what I want to do is I want to provide an updated presentation to the City Council and to the people of Sioux Falls, on the vision and the next steps. And I would like to do that in the next 30 days, and I'll work with the City Council to schedule that. So again, you'll be getting a lot more information on that, and I think that's a good thing in the spirit of trying to be open with all of you and of course with the public. I also wanted to mention there's three really big items involving the city's finances that we tried to share with the people of Sioux Falls. It didn't get a lot of coverage, and I wanted to make sure that people knew about all three of these. Number one, and if you wouldn't mind, we'll also put this up on the screen for people to see at home. But there are three big events. Number one, Moody's Investor Service. They just reaffirmed our AA2 bond rating. And this is just huge if you are a city entity. Moody's is famous for evaluating not only businesses, but evaluating municipalities, just like Sioux Falls. And they reaffirmed our very, very strong rating. In fact, as you'll see up on the screen, there were a couple of quotes that I thought were just important for people of Sioux Falls to understand. And with your permission, I'm just going to read those. The AA2 rating reflects the city's consistently strong sales tax collections derived from a healthy local economy despite a recent weakening in collections, solid debt service coverage with limited near-term borrowing, well-managed city finances, and a healthy reserve level within its sales and use tax fund. Then later on, they write, though fiscal challenges could arise, we believe the city's financial position will remain sound given the city's historical record of prudent management, commitment to protecting existing reserves, and funding legacy costs on an annual basis. I think that's it's huge news. And I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again, the vast majority of cities, not only in our state, but throughout our country, would like to have the financial stability that Sioux Falls has. And I think I certainly don't deserve any credit for that, but people like the city councils in years past, the department heads now and in years past, and mayors way before me, deserve that credit. Also, there was something that I guess we kind of take for granted that I don't think we should. We did something that should be done, and we did do it, and that was we refinanced over $12 million in debt that we had in the city. And as you know, you've been hearing more and more about these low borrowing rates. Well, right now, they are low. And in fact, we found out just how low they are by refinancing some of the debt that we have in our city. We were able to capture an incredibly competitive rate of less than 1%. Yes, that's true, less than 1%, 0.85 of 1%. In terms of that rate. And what that'll do is it'll save about $850,000 over the next 4 years. It's a big, big win for our city, and I didn't want to minimize that. And then last but not least, there is a man that has been in charge of leading the finances for the city for quite some time now. And he made a decision along with his beautiful wife to retire. His name is Gene Rowenhorst. I worked with Gene at City, and I've truly enjoyed working with him now in city government, but he's made a decision to retire. I wanted the people of Sioux Falls know that this is a man we shouldn't have taken for granted. He gave his time, his talent to the city in so many different ways, and I just wanted to congratulate him on his years of service. And he's going to stick with me and the city council until we find a suitable replacement for Gene. But again, Gene, I wanted to thank you for everything you've done for us. And then I wanted to let you know there's a lot of other good things happening in the city, Sioux Falls, and just hang in there tight and stay positive. But Councilor Jameson, thanks again.
You bet. Thank you. Any other questions for the mayor? Anything? Okay, we'll move on to our committee reports. Start with the audit committee. We have a 4 o'clock meeting tomorrow here, if you're interested in attending. Any questions of the audit? Fiscal committee, any comments? Rex, do you have any comments? I know Councilor Brown is out. I think he updated us last time, so I think we're good.
Yeah,
but
he did update us last time, so I don't think I have anything to add to that. Our next meeting is when, Deborah? Next month?
Thank you, Deborah Owen. It's that first Monday in October. I think
Yeah.
that is the 4th?
Thank
4th
you.
of October.
Okay, move on to land use committee.
No report, Mr. Chair.
Report there. Public services committee.
No report.
This is a no report kind of meeting. City council open discussion. Any items anybody like to discuss? Anything? Councilor Erpenbach.
I just have something to put on your minds, and maybe you've thought about this already. I briefly emailed with the mayor today about this. Items 5 and 6 on the consent agenda tonight. They reflect the, it's possible that they would reflect a time in state law, where state law allows us to deny a liquor license transfer based on the suitability of the operator. I don't want to belittle the service that the Graham family has provided to Sioux Falls over the years, but at this point, the business that was the Oaks Hotel is an embarrassment to us. They owe us money as a city. I realize that they have signed up to maybe get an asbestos removal thing moving along, but they promised it a long time ago. This might be one of those times to think as a city council that maybe don't deny it, but maybe we hold off on it until this gentleman becomes a good neighbor to the businesses in the neighborhood that he's in. I did sit here for the Planning Commission meeting the 1st of September, and there are members in the business neighborhood where the Oaks Hotel is now who are terribly disappointed in what they've been left with. And they were terribly disappointed that the conditional use permit was approved by the Planning Commission for a new facility downtown to be owned by this same company. So I'd just ask you to think about that. I haven't decided whether I'm pulling it off the consent agenda. I probably will, just so that we vote on it separately. But I think it's one of those times when we need to encourage people to be good neighbors And maybe we just bring that up as something that we hold off on until he's ready to be a good neighbor in the other parts of town. Thank you.
Any further open discussion items, anything? Councilor Intiman?
Do we know where that's at, Mike, as far as the asbestos removal and the demolition of the oaks?
Mike Cooper, Planning and Building Services. The Oaks asbestos abatement is underway. It has been underway for about the last week or so. We've been going out about every 2 or 3 days to monitor the progress, and so that portion of the project is underway. We have alerted Mr. Graham that, at least according to the proposed schedule, that this hearing would be before the council on October 4th to consider his request for the downtown transfer, and that, depending on his the amount of progress that we're seeing at the Oaks, that may impact the City Council's decision. But I will say in defense of the Planning Commission that they really don't have the legal ability to make a decision based on the character of the person. They can only base it on the location and the land use.
Absolutely, and they made
Right.
that clear with
Yep.
the individuals from the neighborhood that were concerned about that. It's just one of those things, though, that we're at a point where we can make that decision.
Sure.
So I just want us to think about that.
But we're watching the situation. We're going out there about every 2 to 3 days to make contact with the abatement contractor to see how it's going.
What's their anticipated schedule in the abatement, the asbestos abatement? Is it
I've heard everything from 2 to 3 more weeks, potentially, to get all that done.
So then another question. I know there were several fines and other citations that were open at one point. Have any of those been cleared up? Have we had any of the fines paid or any of the citations cleared up?
I'm not aware that they've been paid yet, but I can sure check on that. But at this point, I don't know that they have been paid.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Any other questions or open discussion items? All right, seeing none, very good. We'll move into our presentations. We're going to change our order up here a little bit to work out some schedules. First, we'll start with Brent O'Neill with the proposed creation of the tax incremental district number 10. Just so you know, next we'll move on to the monthly financial report with Gene, and then we'll do the comprehensive wastewater study with Mark.
I'll just kick this off while Brent is getting things set up. And again, Mike Cooper, Planning and Building Services, along with Darren Smith, Director of Community Development and Public Parking. Brent is going to provide the council with a briefing for tonight. We have an item before you, the last item, to consider approval of a boundary of tax increment financing district number 10. We did provide the fiscal committee with a briefing on this proposal, but we wanted to bring it to the full council before tonight's vote. And again, tonight is just approving the boundaries of the district. There'll be another opportunity to approve the actual project plan. And so Brent has a PowerPoint that he's going to go through with you. This has been recommended for approval by the Planning Commission. And again, we've done about 9 of these prior to this action item, so it's a great way of encouraging downtown redevelopment, and I want to give you a preview of what you're going to be asked to consider for tonight's City Council meeting. Did I stall for enough time here? Perfect. Okay.
Thank you, Mike. Again, Brent O'Neill, Planning Department, as well as Community Development. As Mike said, there will be a couple items coming in the next couple of weeks, but tonight is to establish the TIF boundary for the CNA project. And as you can see here on this first slide, that's really the concept that they are working with this project on the east side of the river. A couple facts about the project. It will be Class A office space, over 130,000 square feet, a considerable amount of parking on site to accommodate their employees, but it will also serve kind of the public interest in providing additional parking on that side of the river. Their timeline is to start as soon as possible with the completion date in May of 2012 when CNA would move in to the new building. The project will employ 450 people once the project is complete. A couple other facts. It's at the site of the old Schoeneman's lumber yard. The entity owning it will be Lumber Exchange. It's a partnership between Lloyd Companies and Al Schoeneman, with Al Schoeneman being the primary partner. With Lloyd the Companies, they will be the developer of the project. Perspective is doing the architectural work, and just kind of a broad figure, $25 million is the total investment of this project. TIF districts in general are a way to provide a good source of revenue for economic development projects. In this case, the project will create an increase in the property value, which also create an increase in the property taxes payable. What this does is allows us to use the property taxes payable in the future on a current project, on a project that won't go forward except for the TIF. Under the scenario, the taxing entities, in this case being the county, the city, and the school district, will continue to receive the same amount of taxes that they currently do. But what it does is it's going to create an increment that will allow that additional money to go into a special fund for this project. TIFs generally have a 20-year maximum life when all funds can be collected and expended. And after the increment period is over, the regular taxing entities, the city again, school district, and the county will get their increased share because of this project. One last thing as I go into the rest of the presentation, state law has kind of a process outlined that starts at the Planning Commission level and then moves to the City Council level, and Mike mentioned that a little bit, but again, the Planning Commission did come up with the boundary as well as the plan and is recommending that the Council look at those and approve those. This slide right here, I'll just go over real quickly, is just an overview of the project area, but what you see in yellow is what we are proposing the council look at for TIF 10 boundary. It includes 3 parcels now due to a replat, also part of the abandoned railroad adjacent to it, and part of the river to accommodate some potential work with the River Greenway project. A couple key facts about what we're looking at with TIF District 10 as far as the base level. Right now we're estimating the current taxable value at under $1 million, but we're using $1 million for this purpose, which amounts to $17,000 annually in property taxes paid. And it's divided out, as you see in the chart, the city, school, and county all get a share of that. After this project goes forward, the projections that we're working with show that this project will probably be taxable at about $20.5 million, and that will create $400,000 in new property taxes, which is our increment in this case. On the flip side of what the revenue will be is what expenditures are going to be needed for this project. And TIF statute as well as city policy has some specific guidelines for how TIF can be used. And so what you have here on this list is 6 broad categories of how the money would be used. Obviously, see the big one is the parking ramp. And this is actually just a portion of the parking facility. Would pay for kind of a separate structure to the south of the building. Also included in there is $1 million for the greenway, some of the professional fees that are needed to make the project get to this point, some of the land value, as well as any legal and professional fees that are also associated with it. So that takes us to about $8.5 million in eligible expenses. In this case, TIF will allow funding into the project that will make the project go forward. We really believe that the project would not go forward except for this money coming into the project, and it does fill a valuable need for us. On the next point there, of that $8.5 million that we allowed in eligible expenses, what we're projecting based on our TIF revenue as well as what we kind of feel are reasonable expenses, $4.75 million is what we are going to put into the TIF plan for the amount of expenses that can be reimbursed. Because this is going to be paid back over a series of years, financing is required up front to pay for them, in the next year. So as Lloyd Companies and Lumber Exchange are working on this project. So in this case, the developer is securing private financing from a series of partners. So they will be paying for these projects up front, and then the tax increment will be reimbursing the developer and the developer's debt service. Just wanted to point out on one last point that there is, again, I said it already, but a 20-year payback period from the start of the TIF. So this TIF could last as long as 20 years from tonight if the boundary is approved. A couple other considerations. The property is Zone C3. This is something we took care of a couple months ago. So the project can go forward without any zoning concerns at all. The plan and project and boundary have all been drawn in accordance with state statute and the city's TIF guidelines. We also have two plans in place, the 2015 downtown plan and the 2035 comprehensive plan. And this project also conforms with both of those. With that, I just wanted to, point out again, we're doing the informational today as well as the boundary consideration, and then we'd come back October 4th to present the plan. And the plan will be kind of some of the details I went over here, the eligible expenses, the amount of reimbursement, how all those pieces come together. With that, I would certainly answer any questions.
Any questions for Brent? Or Mike?
Yeah, I did want to mention, too, that we did, as part of this, because it does affect other taxing districts, have communicated with both the county and the school district. So they're aware of what we're doing. Neither one of them have a comment about it. In particular, they do not object at all.
Well, I don't see any questions. That seems pretty good then.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Gene, if you're ready, we'll move into our monthly financial report with Gene Roanhorse.
Gene Roanhorse, Director of Finance for the City of Sioux Falls. This month we have some changes on the financial report that trying to go along with the council's wishes to make this thing more friendly, user-friendly, and so we're starting to do some of that, and we hope it is, and if it isn't, you got to tell us about it. And if you want some more changes, you got to tell us, because we're not clairvoyant, and we'll do what we can. First thing we're going to look at is some of the economic indicators. In the Sioux Falls MSA, unemployment appears to have leveled off at about a little over 4%, 4.3% to be exact. In both June and July, the MSA unemployment rates were not available at the time of the this report was made, so it's going to be you're back 1 month. I don't know what slowed down Pier, but they did not have the numbers available, and we haven't got them yet. But you will see that we have changed some things in some other tables here. Sioux Falls year-to-date taxable sales growth. The taxable sales is continuing to look good. It's on a positive direction. This isn't reflected back in our tax collections yet, but it will be. Again, in this particular part, we did not have the August numbers. Pier has not published them as yet, but we will use them. From time to time, we're going to be behind a little bit, 1 month possibly. On our building permits for valuation, it's still moving slowly, but it's doing okay. That's probably the good news. The August permits numbers was 23.4 million. Year to date, we've done 20.1 million, 201 million. Any questions on the economic impacts that are bothering us? Then we can go to the general fund and look at the year-to-date revenues. Year-to-date, the general fund revenues continue to trend slightly above 2009, primarily due to the property tax collections remaining on the target, and we're at 3% now with the sales tax, 3% growth rate, so that's good news. And that goes back to our earlier sales taxable sales sold. Year-to-date expenditures in the general fund, they remain on course. If you look at the charts in there, the bars are almost identical, so it's just coming pretty much even so far. The good news, like I say, is we're not going down anymore. Some capital program highlights that we can take a look-see at. We had 5 construction bids opened in August, average of 3 bidders for each one of the projects, so that's good news. The low bids, average low bid was 2% above the estimate. And that's the first time for a while that we've seen things go the other way, that the estimates, the bid was 2% above the estimate. We've been going the other way for a long time now, where it's turned around, but it's one of those signs that it's an indicator and gives you a little more sense of maybe things are starting to turn around. Sales tax reporting is one of the big changes. If you look in your actual report, we have that, it's on, I think, about page 10 in your reports, but it's the actual sales tax reports that you get every month. The difference is that report is now on an accrual basis. And if you look at the chart that's up there, just to give you a sense of how it's working, in the center column, the city receipts, this is a cash basis, so this is what we got every month from the Department of Revenue. And look at how the numbers in that center column spike up and down. We've taken those same numbers and switched this thing over to an accrual basis, and we're matching up with the state now, and like I say, using an accrual basis, and you can see how that tends to smooth it out. And it is a better sense of reporting. So hopefully we'll see this continue to improve. It seems to be working, and we have no reason to think that it won't be any more trouble. The mayor alluded to the bond refinancing that we did last week. On Wednesday, we did the refunding. It was actually $12.1 million out in sales and entertainment tax bonds. There were 5 bids for the bonds, the lowest being 0.85%, and that's 0.85 for 4 years. That seems amazing to me. The highest bid was 1.19, and the others were in the middle. So interest rates, at least if you're borrowing money, now's the time to do it. I don't have anything on the horizon, but it's the right price. And then, of course, Moody's reaffirmed our high-quality rating, and that's one of the reasons that our rating is as good as it is because we get the Moody's report, get the Moody's blessing on this. The net effect of it is we've got as we continue to have a good, sound financial position. We don't have to be doing anything by knee-jerk reactions. We can do, if things have to be done, we can do them with foresight and some thought, and keep our financial condition in good report. That's all I've got. If there's any other questions or about the financial reports, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Any questions for Gene? Gene, if I could, the cash versus the accrual process, you went back the whole year.
Yes.
How will that work? Is there a way to, now going forward, we'll be comparing those numbers from last year's numbers using the accrual process. Do you have any intention, is there any way to go back further so that when we compare last year's numbers over last year's months?
Well, you're getting the numbers. We got them year to date. We could fill in that center column where it says cash receipts, city receipts. We just have to fill out the rest of them going down the page there. We can do that.
I don't know if it's valuable or not, but I think everybody kind of watches those month-to-month numbers and the month-to-month over last year's numbers. I just want to have some way to calibrate it, so to speak. So
we can give them to you. That's fine. You'll sleep a lot better if you don't look at them.
If it's of need of anybody else.
No, I agree, but he's right. 2008 was that high water mark, so it is kind of difficult to look at those numbers, but it is kind of helpful to kind of gauge that, that way. I would appreciate that.
Okay. Anything else for Gene? Mayor?
Councilor Jimson, I just wanted to let the team know that, and the city know, that if there are other opportunities to refinance any borrowing that we've done over the years, Gene and his team are evaluating that now. It truly is, it's a fire sale when it comes to borrowing and these rates. So, if we borrowed before at 4 or 5 or 6% and we can get it now at 1%, Gene and his team will go out and try to find that.
Yeah, you should note that the page in your report that shows the outstanding debt, this borrowing does not impact that because we're paying off the other ones. So that you won't see a spike in the outstanding debt.
Yes, Mayor.
Gene, would you have any idea what percentage of cities are ranked at AA2 or higher?
Our financial advisor tells us that they really can't find one. Now, ours is unique when we look at it. This is a revenue bond. It's not a general obligation bond. And for a revenue bond to hold the rating that Moody's has given to us, like I say, it's not, you don't hear of it. That's a very strong rating, but we will, because it is a revenue bond, we're probably about as high as we'll ever get. But that's just the fact that it's a revenue bond versus a GO bond.
Gene,
I swear I did not know the answer to that before I asked it. I swear. But I'm pleased with the answer, definitely.
Gene, I'd just like to say on behalf at least of myself, over the years working with you, I've enjoyed it. I hope your retirement comes soon and you get everything you want in your retirement and lots of years playing golf, racing cars, whatever you do in your retirement.
I got a few things to do.
Good. Well, good for you, Gene.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Okay, next we'll move on to our comprehensive wastewater study with Mark Cotter. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Good evening, good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. Just a few brief words before we get started. First, I'll introduce who is with us tonight, and I'll just turn to the side. Mike Coleman. He is the local project engineer for HDR Engineering. That's Mike. We also have a couple familiar faces. Trent Lubers, the division manager in Public Works for the wastewater utility, and Mark Perry, the principal engineer for the wastewater system. And in a minute, I'll introduce our speaker, Tom Gould. But essentially, just some background for some of the new council members is that as a result of the concerns that were raised last year when we were negotiating a contract with the city of Harrisburg, that it had been some time before the city had to enter into one of those agreements. We certainly tried to work at the best of our abilities to find a fair and practical way. When we came away from it with the level of concerns, we really didn't have a good set of guiding principles and financial policies to really establish what the rates should be to buy into the system. And so as a result of that and a council action that came in March of this year that really resolved that there would be a comprehensive wastewater study done for the region. There's a map that we provided that lists out the areas within a 10-mile boundary of the City of Sioux Falls. Those have been the initial, that's the most practical set of communities that would likely, at some point in the future, ask or consider discharging their wastewater to the City of Sioux Falls. So that's the initial study area. But that can be somewhat moved over time, but that's the initial. And again, the overall goal is to establish the guiding principles and establish really the financial framework of what this would look like if there was a regional system here. The solid waste with the 5-county area has been very successful for the City of Sioux Falls, as well as Siouxland libraries. Across the country, regional systems are very prevalent, and we wanted to make sure we brought the right people in to give us that guidance to set this up. But we've got a lot of work to do. We've just wanted to give you a timely update today. We have a key meeting tomorrow as a team, and it just worked out very good that we wanted to give you an update and answer any of your initial questions. The communities that we've that are in the study area have been really, they've sent us a lot of information on their own wastewater systems. We've brought them in. It was very well attended to give them an overview of what the study will do and what it won't do. We've also conducted a rates 101 so that they understand over time, over the last 5 years, the City Council has sat through detailed rate reviews for this utility, and we wanted to give them some of that training, some of that terminology, and so that's been conducted. Recently, we went to the IRAB board and had a very good discussion on where the study's at, but again, there's a lot of work to come. And we also have received 2 grants for this work. This is about a $300,000 study. There is a $75,000 grant that we've received from the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, and another $50,000 grant that we've received from East Dakota Water out of Brookings. And so it's been supported by 2 very good agencies that look at just the health of this region and our water and wastewater systems. So now with the speaker, Tom Gould is the National Technical Director of Finance and Rates. He works with municipalities across the U.S. and Canada. He is the instructor for the American Water Works 3-day financial management seminar. He's also a contributing author of the M1 manual, which is the industry standard for utility rate setting. He's currently working with the City of Lincoln on their utility rates. We look to Lincoln for a lot of what they do. They also look to the City of Sioux Falls, and so they're a very good benchmark community. And just anecdotally, HDR has been our consultant that we've brought in to address the collapsed sewer, as well as they were the engineer that also designed the 41st Street Bridge. So they're a very good global company that we source their technical expertise. They've done this across the country, and we feel like we've hired the right people to really evaluate this for the City of Sioux Falls. So with that, Tom Gould.
Thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here today. I want to talk to you a little bit about the activities that we've undertaken and give you an overview of sort of the purpose and objective of this study. We also want to talk about some of the key concepts of the regional sewer system, discuss some of the key activities we've had to date. Mark has touched on those to a certain extent, and provide an overview of the key financial guidelines and the financial policies that would be a part of the regional sewer system. I think the very bottom point is a critical one. At this point, the city is exploring the issue of regionalization, and no decisions have been made about regionalization. So all the concepts I'm going to talk about are really, truly concepts at this point in time. And the purpose of the study is to really explore this, see if this is a good situation or a good deal for both the city and the regional customers. And if it is, great. And if it isn't, then we'll know the answer to that. So the objective and purpose of the regionalization study is really a twofold situation. One is it's driven by the Harrisburg Agreement. And in that agreement, it basically said that you would take a look at regionalization. And there were some issues about fairness of the cost recovery system that you were using and so forth. But coming out of that, there's even some more things that really need to be added on to the study to really give you the full flavor of what it's about. And the first is that I think Sioux Falls really wants to be a good neighbor, and that's an important concept. I work with a lot of municipal utilities, and they aren't always good neighbors to each other. And so I think this is an opportunity for you to reach out and really establish a strong relationship with some of the surrounding communities. The other part that drives this is really the complexity of the regulatory system that you see today. We aren't living in the 1940s and 50s anymore. It's a much more complex world in terms of environmental requirements and so forth. So it's pretty challenging for some of these small communities to meet all the regulatory requirements that are going on. And so regional systems have come about simply in part because of that, but also because of the economies of scale. So that when you start looking at a regionalization situation, usually the economies of scale make a lot of sense in terms of all parties, including the city and the regional partners along the way. We have existing capacity available at the treatment plant. And so if we have existing capacity available, it might make sense to allow new customers to connect to that system. And again, it's part of that process of logical development within the regional area and making the opportunity available for these regional customers to connect to your system. The bottom bullet that I have here is an important one, which is, I think, consistency in your policy making. One of the challenges I think anybody would have is, if I'm a new customer coming to the city, tell me how the arrangement would work, what's the rules around which we're going to play this game, and how do we move forward in a consistent fashion with anybody that comes to the city. So part of the thrust of this study is to create those consistency in policies and the way that we deal with anyone that wants to come to the city, so that there's a fair way to deal with all parties around the table. One of the challenges that you have is the fact that you do have extensive growth on your system. And as you look here, you'll see that this is the 2035 shape of the sanitary sewer system, and you can see it has far-reaching effects. I apologize because it looks very tiny on the screen, but if anyone wants the hard copy of this and get more detail, you can see it. But the challenge is that as you start moving out into those outward areas, there are certain costs associated with expansion, and how do you do that in a logical way? And Sioux Falls has done a tremendous job in terms of how they look at it from a planning perspective, and that they don't have sort of wild, unchecked growth along the way, that there's a clear pattern of where development will occur and how you'll address that. And so that's the starting point, really, of a lot of the discussions that we're going to have. And again, part of the Harrisburg Agreement had a requirement that you look out to 2035. So that's one of the reasons why you see this particular map on the wall. So let's talk about some key concepts and principles for regionalization. So I played basketball yesterday. We didn't get all the guys that we normally get, and we had to play 3-on-3. Well, you know, so now we're playing the game a little bit differently. So the first thing we all did was we said, okay, so how are we going to do this? We're going to play half court, we're going to play full court. How are we going to deal with the rules? And that was the first thing that we did. We decided how we were going to play the game. And that's the first thing that we need to do as a regionalization, is to set those guiding policies or principles around how we're going to operate. So what you're going to see on the next page is the start of this idea or concept of regionalization and how we get back to some of these guiding principles. Now, regionalization has some benefits and it can have some drawbacks along the way. And both parties, both the city and the regional customers, trade off on certain things. And what you'll see here is there's two things that we're looking at, primarily risk and control. One of the things that we like to do is minimize risk in any transaction. So if we can minimize risk through partnerships, that's always a good thing. But when we do partnerships or regionalization, what we end up doing is giving up some control at some level. And so for the local customers, the regional customers that we're talking about, one of the things that they do give up is that local control to a certain extent. And we'll talk about what the level of that extent is. But those are the trade-offs that you typically get into. And there's also financial stability that comes into this. The more customers that you have on a system, the more stable it can be. And so there are certain advantages and disadvantages to this process. So one of the things that will come out of this study is sort of the idea of, so what are some of the risks? What are some of the rewards that come out of this? And what are some of the things that we might have to give up along the way? Or what do we retain as a city? So there are certain things that we definitely want to retain in this transaction no matter what. If we can't retain those, then there isn't going to be a regionalization issue, okay? Unless you decide to make those changes, okay? If you have questions as I go through this, if you'd like to take those, I'd be glad to do that. So one of the first things we started working on is what I might call regional principles. And these, again, are the guiding principles for regionalization, and they talk about certain things like ownership and how we establish the rates and so on and so forth, and governance. Those are all the big three right there. Again, certain principles are non-negotiable. We just aren't willing to do certain things to make this all happen. But other things, we certainly are willing to talk about those, have some open discussions about those, and negotiate with the regional customers. And some of those things are maybe things like financial policies about certain ways that we deal with certain things and so forth. And the principles right now are currently in draft form. So what I want to do is go through some of the policies or the guiding principles with you and give you a sense of where we're at and see what your reaction to those are. So the first is ownership. Ownership is a really important element of this entire transaction. And the first guiding principle is the city is the sole owner of the regional system. However we define that, the city is the owner of the regional system. The city is also the sole owner of its own collection system. So I'm going to make a couple of distinctions here for you if you aren't familiar with wastewater facilities. We have the treatment plant, and then we have a collection system, okay? And the treatment plant clearly is the city's. That's part of the regional system. But on the collection side, not all of the collection system that you have will serve the regional customers. So one of the things that we'll have to do along the way is define that portion of the collection system that serves the regional customers. The balance of that will still be the city's responsibility, the retail customers. Now, along the way, what we've basically said in these first two bullets is you'll own the treatment plant and you'll own all of the collection system. It'll be your responsibility. Okay? That doesn't mean that there won't be some cost sharing along the way, but there definitely will be an ownership issue. Okay? And the third ownership issue is that the regional customers will retain the ownership of their own collection system. So that means they'll take care of it. It's their responsibility, and I think that just makes sense. Now, on the regional system, we need to do a couple of things. We need to think about what is the regional system. And again, what we're going to do is it's going to be comprised of the wastewater treatment facilities, today's facilities and any future facilities, and what I might call the regional interceptors, or those collection lines that we need to use to serve those regional customers. Now, the extensions required to connect a customer to that regional system will be the responsibility of that regional customer in terms of paying for that. So if we have this regional system defined of our interceptors, and you live out here and you want to connect to the system, you need to run the line to our system, and it's your responsibility to pay for that. So that's a guiding principle along the way. Now, there's another concept that we've been talking about, which is called capacity reservation. And in fact, if you look at the Harrisburg Agreement, it does talk to a certain extent about reservation of capacity. So in this process, how does this work? Well, the first point is each customer will designate their capacity requirements via a reservation of capacity. So it's like going to dinner. I'm bringing 4 people. Okay, we'll save a table for you for 4. It's pretty simple, straightforward concept. The trick of that is having to designate the amount of capacity that you need and want at a certain point in time. New future customers will buy into the reserve capacity via a regional system development charge. So this is a little different concept. So if I'm a regional customer or a potential regional customer over here, I want to join the system, I want to hook up, then I'm going to have to pay a buy-in fee, essentially a system development charge, and that's a portion of the cost recovery system that we will establish. So we have existing capacity in the treatment facilities, as an example. Existing customers have paid to have that capacity there. They need to be reimbursed for the value of that capacity that they're willing to give to this outside entity. So there will be a charge if you're a new customer and want to connect to the system. Future extensions of capacity by existing customers beyond the existing reserve capacity levels will be subject, again, to a regional SDC. So if you're an existing customer and you want to grow, what this does is it charges those customers that are growing. The ones that are not growing won't be charged. So those areas that have greater growth will pay for growth. Those that don't have as much growth won't be paying the charges. So in that way, again, we get back to this balance of equity between existing customers and new customers. The reservation of capacity doesn't impart or imply any ownership in the system. So that goes back to our very first basic bullet. Just because you've reserved capacity or you've paid system development charges, that doesn't imply ownership. Reservation of capacity also can't be bought or sold between customers. So this is what will protect us in terms of having people not overbuying and then ultimately bartering it away or trying to sell it to other local regional customers. And then if somewhere along the way somebody says, gee, I don't like this regional system, I want to walk away from it, all that ownership goes back to the city at no cost to the city. They will not sell it back to you, or you won't have to buy it back. It just reverts back to the city. That's part of the rules. Okay? Let's go to the next slide. So financial planning and rate setting. This is a big, big, big piece of the entire process. And the reason why it's a big piece is, I'll be real frank with you, nobody trusts you, especially the regional customers. And so what they want to do is they want to make sure that we have a good set of rules in place about how they're going to be treated as we go forward. That only makes sense. So one of the things that we are starting to work on is establishing these financial policies and the rate setting process. So it's very clear and transparent about how we will establish these rates going forward. So one of the first guiding principles is that we'll use generally accepted financial planning and rate-setting techniques to establish the rates and fees. So again, what we can do is create that transparency, but also those fees will be legally defendable if there were challenged over those fees, because we are using industry standards about how to establish those rates. The city's methodology should reflect the specific and unique characteristics of the regional system. One of the great things about, some of the rate manuals that are out there is they give you the guiding principles, but how you take those basic principles and tailor them to the specific and unique circumstances of the city is an important part of this process. And we do have some unique circumstances here, and so that's going to be one of our challenges is how do we deal with all the customers or the potential regional customers and deal with them in a fair way. And so that will be the tailoring of these guiding principles and of these methodologies. So the next part is the city will account for its wastewater utility as a whole, meaning that as we start accounting for all the beans, what we don't want to have to do is create any excessive accounting systems or approaches that will require greater costs on the part of our accounting or finance department to deal with this. What we will do is we'll take those current costs that you have in place today, we'll figure out a way to equitably allocate them to the various customer groups using a cost of service technique. And that's the most equitable way that we can kind of deal with this. All regional customers will be separately metered. We'll have a clear understanding of exactly how much the regional customers are contributing to the wastewater system. That's a part of our rate-setting process of understanding how much everybody is contributing. The city, as the owner of the system, shall earn a fair return on its investment to serve the regional customers. And it's a method of determining that fair return on investment still needs to be determined. We've got some different ideas about how to do that. But again, the idea is if you're going to serve the outside regional customers, then you ought to earn a fair return on your investment to serve those customers. That's the basic core concepts of rate setting that you'll see in the both public and private sector. And one of the ideas that we've talked about, and I'm not sure this will actually end up working out this way, but we've said that rates for regional customers shall be uniform across all customers. And I've got a little question mark there by Harrisburg. This is coming back to one of the earlier points, which is you might have customers with unique and different circumstances from another customer. And should we have a uniform rate for all customers, meaning everybody pays the same cost per 1,000 gallons, or should there be slight differences in rates between the various customers? Ideally, you'd probably like to charge everybody the same uniform rate, but we're now coming to the conclusion that we need to take a look at that and take a good look to see if Harrisburg or any other customer needs a unique rate that's a little bit different than somebody else because of the facilities that they may have or the wastewater components that they may have in terms of strength or volume and so forth. So again, that's part of this process. So the regional system development charges, let me just sort of put the big umbrella over this one, which is it is a method of cost recovery. And it's a little bit different than what you've done in the past. What you've done in the past has been more focused on cost recovery of your interceptors and collection system. This looks at both the cost recovery of your treatment facilities along with your collection or interceptor system. So one of the things that we're going to do is take a look at the regional system development charges, and we will establish those if they make sense, and they'd be assessed on all future connections. So if you're a new customer connecting to the system, you'd be assessed a regional system development charge. And that would be anybody in the city or out the city, and I'll get to that just in a second. With the exception of Harrisburg, existing regional customers will be grandfathered in for purposes of payment of SDCs. So if you're an existing customer of the city and you're providing wastewater to us today, you're not going to pay any new SDCs. It's only on future expansion beyond what you have today. The regional SDCs shall be no greater than the cost established in the study. That's a basic principle of we aren't going to charge more than it costs. So we can charge something less than it costs, but that would be essentially subsidizing the cost of growth. So we'll establish what the cost is, and you as a council can establish the policy around how you want to establish that final system development charges. We've also talked about uniform SDCs, much like a uniform rate. Again, we'll have to take a look at that and see how that works out. And then the last piece is a little bit on the local control side. Remember I talked about one of the scary things at the regional customer level is giving up control. Well, in this particular case, regional customers may pass those SDC costs through to their local customers in any way that they deem appropriate, meaning that they can pass them through as a regional SDC, so when a new connection occurs on their system, that's how they get it. They can bury it within their rates. They can pay for it through general fund. We don't really care, just as long as the city gets their SDC, the regional SDC. So that, again, is one of the things that we want to try and do is we want to stay out of the business of the local community about how they charge the SDCs to their customers. We'll take care of our system. You can take care of your system from a governance standpoint. And then finally, I've got policy, governance, and local control. And again, the city is going to be responsible for establishing all regional wastewater system operating rules, standards, and procedures. Again, you're the owner of the system. You ought to set those rules and standards around how that will work. The city is responsible for all decisions and sole authority for the regional wastewater system to issue debt and establish the rates, fees, and charges. Again, that's a really important component. So if you want to go out and issue debt, that's your decision. That's not requiring the approval of local systems. Regional customers shall retain control of their local rates, fees, and the rate setting process. So again, we're not going to tell a local community how to set their local rates. That's their choice. We're basically passing through the cost of the regional system to them. They need to add on their local costs, and that's how they would establish their own rates. Okay, we can certainly help them with ideas about how to establish cost-based rates, but at the local level, that's the City Council's decision at the local level. City will establish, and I want to clarify here what the wording is. It says to establish a regional operating board. That's kind of a placeholder for a name at the current time. What we're thinking about is, much like the regional solid waste planning board that you have, something to that extent, where the local, the regional customers have some sense of communication clearly with the city on issues, but not necessarily to the point of being a board with a lot of power or authority over the system, because that's essentially at the top. You have the sole ownership of the system, and you'll establish the rules and policies. It seems to be more of an opportunity to coordinate on operations and so forth. So that's really the extent of what that last bullet is, but I wanted to make sure that I was clear that that was just a placeholder name at the current time. Again, the makeup, role, and responsibilities of that board are to be determined, and so that's maybe one of those things where we talk about it with the regional customers and see what they want to do, see what we want to do, and we'll go back and forth and come to some conclusion about that. So that's the guiding principles around how we would look at the regionalization. And I think that guiding principles, or the guiding principles that we've established, then feed into how we might look at things from a financial policy perspective. I know earlier today or tonight you had a discussion about your Moody's bond rating. And there's a lot of things that go into a Moody's bond rating. And one of the things that goes into that is, do you have established written financial policies around how you want to operate your utilities? And Moody's eats this stuff up. If you put everything in writing and say, here's how we're going to deal with things from a financial perspective, and you have a wonderful master plan in front of them and a comprehensive rate study, that's like good as gold, because it tells them a number of things. One is that you're well managed, that you, at a policy level, have thought about these issues, and you know how you want to be proactive on certain issues as opposed to being reactive. And I think that was one of the earlier comments you heard, is that we are more proactive than reactive. So the financial and rate setting policies that we've established in draft form, this is a very high level of some of the issues that come out of this, but they are based upon some guiding principles of the Government Finance Officers Association, or GFOA, and they are tailored around the regionalization and the wastewater utility. But you can see that there's various items here, purpose of the financial and rate setting policies to establish consistency and so forth. Wastewater rates and fees, it talks about a specific methodology that we might consider for doing that and so forth. If you have questions about this, I'll certainly be glad to answer those. No. Okay. So, so the key activities to date and the next steps, I think Mike, or Mark, I should say, has brought you up to date on a lot of the things that have been going on in terms of the public meetings. We've met with the IRAB recently. We've had 2 meetings with the regional customers, so we've done a good job, I think, of starting to coordinate with the local and the regional customers. So at this point, our next steps really are starting to assemble some of the data and information. We've been collecting data from the regional customers. We want to start to develop that regional methodology, and we'll come back to you and talk about that, along with the system development charge methodology, and continue to work with those local communities. And we've had good feedback and positive feedback from those regional customers. So with that, if you have questions.
Any questions, Councilor Intamin?
What's the input been from the surrounding communities on this study so far?
Input in terms of whether they're...
Understanding the program that you've got and the study that we're doing, and is it going to be something we're going to be able to provide in the future, and are they excited about it? What are they looking at for expansion of their facilities, things like that?
Yeah, I think what I've seen has been very positive. There's been a number of communities, I think there's right now about a dozen communities that have provided us with information to allow us to start to analyze their current situation, future situation. I think a lot of folks are sort of sitting back wondering, how are the pieces all going to fit together? So I don't know that anybody has stepped up and has said, yeah, this is exactly what we want to do, but I think there's a lot of interest. The first meeting we had probably had 40 to 45 people attend from communities, and the Rates 101 session that I did about a month ago, we probably had 30-some folks attend that. So if nothing else, that was a tremendous benefit to a lot of folks in the audience that learned a little bit that day about how to establish rates at the regional or local level. So I think the feedback so far has been very positive.
Mayor.
Tom, thanks. Two questions. First one is, different communities are farther along in their wastewater treatment facilities than others. And I saw in your presentation that you want all of the rates to be similar at some point in time. Just curious, how are you going to sell that to those communities that are farther along and that have already made investments?
I think that was the point I was trying to make with Harrisburg as the example, which is if you bring something else to the party, then maybe you pay a rate that's different than somebody else that simply sends all of their wastewater to the regional system and simply uses your treatment facilities and your conveyance. So the question in Harrisburg is, well, what if they pre-treat their wastewater and send it to us at a lower strength level than all the other customers? Should they get some kind of discount or a different rate? And at this point, I'm not going to say yes and I'm not going to say no, but those are the kinds of issues that we need to explore. And so that's why maybe the uniform rate concept doesn't work. But at an initial blush, what we wanted to try and do was keep it as straightforward administratively as possible if we could.
Thank you. And then just a follow-up. How do we sell this to the people of Sioux Falls that have, they are making the investment in the infrastructure, and how are we going to sell to them that these other communities, whether it be, Harrisburg or whatever it would be,
right,
that they're going to also pay for the infrastructure itself? Because I think the last thing we want to do is have the people of Sioux Falls paying for the infrastructure and then having the other folks not pay for any of the infrastructure, or unless they're going to pay some premium rates. So, Tom, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I got a lot of thoughts on that. I'll try and keep it brief, though. Well, we talked about these system development charges as a cost recovery mechanism. And again, the idea of that is if the city makes an investment in an expansion of the treatment facilities, as an example, that what you should do is those customers should get reimbursed through time for the investment they've made as new customers connect to the system. Now, that's not a risk-free transaction because it depends upon growth occurring on the system and the regional system. But there's a second part to the question that's really pretty important, which is what happens at the retail rate level? So what benefit do retail customers get out of this transaction? And there's an operating component and a capital component to your retail rates. On the operating side, as we start spreading some of those fixed costs over more customers, we should get a lower per unit cost, which then translates into potentially, hopefully, a lower rate for the city's customers. Don't know if that will happen, but that's a possibility. But the second part is, on the capital side, we've talked about that you would earn a fair return on your investment to serve outside city customers. The presumption is that that fair return on investment may be different than what the inside city customers would make. So therefore, there would be some differential potentially in the rates charged to the outside city customers. Again, that's unclear. We're still at a conceptual level, but that's how you deal with that.
Any other questions for Tom? Councilor Rolfing.
Tom, just about how long do you think this program or this study is going to take?
Yeah, I think initially the timeline was about 18 months to do the entire study because there's a lot of data and information that needs to be collected. And we started in March, so we're a ways through, but we're going to try and get done by probably early spring next year or midsummer. And again, some of this is dependent upon discussions with regional customers and how you get through some of the hoops.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Litz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question pertains to, the idea that we would not interfere or have influence on local municipalities' ability to charge or what they charge or the way they charge the rates to their customers. In your experience, and I think around here we're mainly going to deal with municipalities, but in your experience in other areas, has there been nonprofits or private entities that have their own conveyance systems, pumps, pipes, and things of that nature that charge the municipality? Is that a common practice in the United States?
I'm not sure I understand your question. Can you repeat it one more time?
Okay. Kind of maybe a parallel thing was we sell water to an entity, and they wheel the water to communities. And
Okay.
would the reverse be true?
Oh, yes, of course. Yes. You could have, again, the concepts are sort of still laying on the table, but you could have an outside regional customer that could have another entity close to it and wheel through their system to get wastewater to your system. Is that sort of what you're talking about?
Yes. Or, would there be somebody in the middle that would own the pumps and the pipes that would charge for passing through? Is
Yeah,
that
I
a
think at this
possibility?
point what we've said conceptually is that we're going to define this regional system, and if you have to build something out here to connect to us, that's your problem. The city could, by choice, decide to build something to help make a transaction happen, but at this point we've tried to keep it as clean as possible and say the regional system is the responsibility of the city, and if you need to connect to us, you're going to have to run that line or pumps or whatever to get to us.
So basically, in the foreseeable future, what I'm getting at is the City of Sioux Falls would be dealing with other municipalities on this and not nonprofits or for-profit ventures.
I believe that would be a correct statement, but I'm not close enough.
Anything's possible. But,
I think that's a fair statement,
okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Tom, I was just going to add that just a few months, well, I don't know how many months ago it was, but we dealt with an issue with Harrisburg you're probably well familiar with.
Right.
But a few of us sat up here on the council when we went through that, and it was quite a battle. And I think there's been a lot of excitement about doing this study, and I think it would have laid a lot of groundwork for us if we had had this study done back some time ago as these other communities outgrow their facilities. And I know there's been a lot of discussion with other municipalities to avoid replicating their own wastewater treatment plants when we have such a large one that we can expand upon and bring all these in. So I'm real excited about getting this going and moving it forward. Help me again, refresh me, after all your acronyms and things.
Yes.
And Mark Cotter's graphs that he puts together. Tell me, when were you trying to start this? Or Mark, when are you hoping to start this? What is the next step here?
I think our overall goal was to have the study complete by March of 11. And so we could, at that point, either take action and clearly have a set of guiding principles to move forward, because I don't believe that Harrisburg will be the last community that, through their growth and development, evaluates, should we build our own plant, should we expand our lagoons, or should we pump to Sioux Falls? And I think one of the comments that was shared is what's been the interest. I think many of the communities in this area have seen really good and strong growth, and they've worked with the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. They've expanded their lagoons, so you see communities like Crooks and Hartford, and from a capacity standpoint, they're in very good shape. But they could also have some of the same growth pressures hit them like happened with Harrisburg, where their growth just went, much faster than they expected. On the other side, like Tom had mentioned, just the regulatory environment is only getting stronger. And it's quite possible that lagoons will not polish the wastewater to a point where it's going to be acceptable to discharge it. And that's when the communities will have to say, similar to what Lennox is undergoing, where they potentially have to add a $4 or $5 million step on the end of the lagoons before they can discharge, or they'll weigh, should we ask the City of Sioux Falls, can we discharge into your system, and through the economy of scale, invest into that system and just have much higher effluent quality of their wastewater. So this is key. I think that it's key from not only a capacity standpoint and the growth of our area, but just the increasing regulatory environment that we see at our population, but these other communities will see it as well. So our goal is to have you a plan back by early second quarter of next year, and look at the pros and cons, and then we'll see what the next steps are.
Councilor Intiman.
We do have an agreement with Harrisburg, correct?
We do, and actually
We also have
Trent
one-
and
Brandon, too?
Trent, yes. Harrisburg will actually likely be discharging wastewater to the City of Sioux Falls within just a matter of weeks. They've been building their pump station and their force main to the City of Sioux Falls. Brandon's discharged their wastewater. They first pre-treat it in lagoons, and then they send us their wastewater in the middle of the night to the headworks of the plant. So they pump directly to the plant. That's something, another difference with another community is they don't only pre-treat, but they pump their wastewater right to the plant. It doesn't even come into our collection system. And we've had them as a customer since the mid-'90s. Renner is a sanitary sewer district, and we've been accepting their wastewater since the '70s. So there's a history, but now with Harrisburg and some of the growth pressures that they've got and their capacity limitations, likely they're not the last one.
Mayor.
Tom, can I ask you, as you can, I've got some business experience, and so I'm struggling a little bit in terms of just how you're going to differentiate what we're going to charge these different communities. And you must have a lot of experience in terms of one community is discharging a different quality of waste, if that's appropriate,
Yes.
than another, and finding that appropriate fee to charge, or that appropriate amount to charge.
Yeah, in fact, let me give you an example of a community I recently worked with. It's a city of Everett, which is to the north of Seattle. And they were approached by a small community that wanted to join the Everett's treatment facilities. And they said, we pre-treat, so we've got, no, actually they had very low strength levels because they had a lot of I&I or stormwater runoff in their system. And they said, we should get a discount because we've got such low strength levels. And on the surface, that makes a lot of sense. But when you started looking at the volumes of wastewater that they were contributing, it ended up being that their rate should have actually been higher. So the way we're going to analyze all this is through it's called a cost of service analysis, and what it essentially does is it takes a look at the cost to serve the individual customers, and it takes into account those individual differences. So if a customer should be allocated a portion of the treatment plant and a portion of the collection lines, it will give us a per unit cost that comes out of that model. So we'll know on a dollar per 1,000-gallon basis what the cost is. And if there isn't significant cost differences between various types of customers, then maybe a uniform rate would be okay. If there are significant cost differences, then maybe we need to go to individual rates for individual customers, which isn't overly complex, but the model will allow us to take a look at individual customers and those unique characteristics.
The quality of the waste in Sioux Falls, it was different this summer. Our normal makeup of our waste was more concentrated during the winter. Sorry, folks.
That's fine.
But during the summer, because we had such an infusion of sump pump water as well as water that had leaked in from pipes and other things like that, that quality was diffused a bit. So I am really still struggling with trying to analyze the quality of wastewater and how we're going to charge differently. And again, I don't want to get too wrapped up in this now because we've still got months and months to go. But I'm going to struggle on that a little bit, and I'll probably challenge Mark and you, Tom, along the way. And then again, last but not least, I just don't want the people of Sioux Falls to bear the burden of the infrastructure costs when the other communities can have kind of an a la carte payment method.
Right. And the idea of this is, in the cost service analysis, is there are ways to quantitatively measure the strength levels of the strength of the wastewater that comes to the plant. So, excuse me. So we will be able to quantify those strengths and look at them compared to what we were getting at the plant, compared to what the retail customers are contributing, and so forth. So there are ways to deal with that. And we are very cognizant of this cost recovery issue, that we want to make sure that we have fair and equitable rates not only for the retail customers but for the regional customers. And when you have equity and fairness, then it should work out okay.
Councilor Litz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This might be for Mark, Tom, but
Okay.
Mark, previously this council had heard thoughts and talk about a new wastewater treatment plant that would be southeast of Sioux Falls in the general vicinity of where the new pump station is, or someplace in that area. And when we build those things, typically, would we bond for that, or would we borrow money from the state? And I know you can't read into the future, but a couple of typical scenarios for financing that.
I think one of our key things is that just over time we've had, if we have a project that in some respects is $2 million or greater, we will a lot of times go to the SRF bond market so we can borrow the low-cost dollars and smooth that in over time. I would expect that with the land purchase and the cost of that facility, we'll certainly be doing a bond. Based on the size, it could, certainly approach greater than $10 million. And that's a plant that the City of Sioux Falls would build regardless if any other partners come in. It's a key part of our master plan for the development of the east side. But just based on that size, I would expect that we would definitely bond. For that.
And then I believe one of the things that you imparted to the council before, Mark, was as technology improves, the amount of land that we need for these water treatment plants is going to shrink. Is that still accurate?
Oh, it's fantastic what's happening. In some suburbs, you'll see what looks like a very nice home, and inside it's a packaged membrane wastewater treatment plant that has very low odor issues to none, because we've also got much better technology to scrub that odor off. And then just also, the technology is so good, it actually discharges a much higher quality effluent to the receiving stream. And we went through a very competitive request for proposal process. HDR is also our selected team on that. They have people that do that across the country, and they are currently analyzing the footprint. So our first thing is we'd like to establish where the land would go, and I would just expect, I haven't seen the outcome of that study, but City of Sioux Falls will likely be building that plant in the next 6 to 10 years.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
I never thought I'd say it, but I'm at that point in my life where this is fascinating stuff.
Mark, if I could ask, sorry, Councilor.
I just had one clarification, and it's just for the listening public. Remind us what SRF stands for, and why do we go to that program so often?
SRF stands for State Revolving Loan Program, and it's a funding mechanism through the State Department of Environment and Natural Resources, where they receive federal dollars, and then they leverage a bond with that to have a very low blended interest rate that would allow municipalities to fund their water and wastewater systems. And so it's a platform that's used widely in South Dakota and across the country, and in many cases we see interest rates in 2.25 or 2.5% interest.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor Litz.
I'd just like to add to that, that is taxpayer money, and the argument has been advanced that we benefit from federal taxpayer dollars. Therefore, the expectation or the idea that we share in the bounty has been put forward to this council.
Yeah, it's a good program for Sioux Falls and all municipalities. I just wanted to make that clear.
I'd certainly recognize, too, Lynn Keller-Forbes here, the director of Southeastern Council of Governments, is in the audience, and they administer those grant programs for us, and they're a great partner for the City of Sioux Falls and all the region communities that they serve.
Mark, if I could, how much is the study going to cost?
The study is just under $300,000. Obviously, we have to reach out to some key national experts because Tom and another key part of this team is John Maxwell, and they have knitted these regional systems together across the country, some in very controversial areas, some in areas like the City of Sioux Falls. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that we vetted all the key issues that have been brought up that we went through last fall, and at the end of the day have a good set of principles and rate-setting methodologies that we can offer other communities if the mayor and the city council so choose to move this plan forward once we have a final recommendation.
And you had mentioned that I believe Tom has some experience in Lincoln, Nebraska. They're doing the same.
They're not doing a regional study, but they're currently studying their retail rate structure. I believe it's for water and wastewater. Is that right? And again, just like the temporary pump station policy, just the size and geographic area of Lincoln, I often look to Lincoln for what they've experienced. And so Lincoln's just a very good benchmark city and same geographic area.
I was just going to add as well that I think the return on investment that I think was used, I think the mayor also talked about the idea of the guys who have been paying for their utility rates to support the structure that we already have. Now will they be subsidizing another city's attachment to our system? I think that is probably going to be one of the sensitive topics for this group. I would think that making sure that citizens understand why this is good for them. Just help us make sure we know that.
We certainly will. And there's a number of those key aspects once we get the policies in place, or once we get the draft policies ready for you to review. We'll come back and start to talk about some of those sensitive pieces because I've certainly have heard them on both sides.
Very good. Any other questions for Mark or Tom?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Do we have anything else? Any other follow-up questions, comments from anybody? All right. Seeing none, we'll move this meeting adjourned.